Okay, going live. Just there's a year or so of reader replacements. The water meter replacements on the agenda. Oh. Yeah, appreciate it. All right, we good? Ben's gonna be a couple minutes late. All right, good evening, everybody. I will call to order this regular monthly meeting of the Village of Trumansburg Board of Trustees. Deputy Mayor Carver will be along shortly. Does the board have any changes to the agenda?
I would just like something briefly for executive session.
I don't know if it's relevant, Carver over here, if you're going to postpone the rain. Okay.
I'll have a couple other items to discuss under my report, and then we are going to push I think we're going to push all three of the EMS items currently on the agenda to next month. And actually, the medical director, that's not a board. We don't need a board approval for that. So we may not actually have it on the agenda. Our current medical director, as you know, is retiring. So we'll have to contract with his replacement. Actually, we will have to bring the approval for the dollar amount. Okay. And the other items we will push to April.
All of EMS?
All the EMS.
All right.
If there's no other changes to the agenda, then we have our consent agenda, which includes meeting minutes from February the 7th, February the 9th, and February 11th. Two of those were budget working sessions. One was our regular meeting, and then we have our monthly abstract of claims. General fund totaling $345,701.61. Water fund totaling $65,918.57. And sewer fund totaling $40,374.62. If someone would like to move the consent agenda for approval.
So moved.
Second. Any need to pull either item from the consent agenda? If not, all in favor of approving the consent agenda as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, item number 4 is a first of 2 public comment periods. If any member of the public would like to speak, we'd love it if you could use the microphone. We could potentially pass it around if that's easier. All I would ask is that you state your name for the record, and if you are online and would like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand feature so I can see that you're interested.
Rachel Kennedy, Lake Street in the Village. I'm wanting to go on the record as expressing my concern about the flock cameras in the village. I'm against them, and I would even go as far to say is I think it's worth investigating, or I would ask you to investigate, if you haven't already, what it would be like to cancel or break the current contract. Yeah, I guess that's my comment for now. Thank you. Anyone?
Okay. Hello, I'm Kate Lubon. I'm a resident of Trumansburg on Wigg Street. And I also am here to show my opposition to the village's use of flock. There's actually no evidence proving that flock reduces crime. And I really see it as a Trojan horse that leads us deeper into techno-fascism. Flock safety should really be called flock surveillance. It gives our data to a large for-profit and highly unethical surveillance company. Mass surveillance is a threat to our civil rights. It's in direct opposition to the Fourth Amendment and is an erosion of our democracy. I do appreciate that the village has taken some precautions to restrict who we share data with, but it is still being shared with, I believe, 7 other police departments and the New York State Crime Prevention or Crime Analysis Center. And we have no control over what those other institutions do with the information. Surveillance doesn't punish the guilty, but it does silence the innocent. And Flock has refused any third-party audits, and there have been many instances where it has been hacked or used unethically. The CEO of Flock recently referred to people involved in trying to deflock their towns as terrorists and as bad as Antifa. A sheriff in Virginia, and I'm happy to share links if anybody wants to see this, recently broke contract with Flock around an email they got from the CEO because the rhetoric was antithetical to healthy democratic opposition and fear-mongering. And this is a highly dehumanizing way to police. It has not been proven, again, to reduce crime. I heard someone at a hearing in Flagstaff, which they did end up breaking contract, make a great point about how people are minimizing that it just records cars and license plates. Have you ever heard of a car being arrested or afraid for its safety? Using the cars as an excuse for tracking human individuals, sentient beings. We're not tracking cars. I have a few questions. In what other ways could the grant money, I believe it was $38,000, have been used to enhance our community? Why was there no notice when cameras were put up? And who is liable for any potential misuse of this technology? I urge the board to break contract and turn off, remove cameras. I understand that it may be difficult to break this contract. I believe that's also intentional, but it is not impossible. And I urge you to follow the example of cities like Austin, Texas, Flagstaff, Arizona, Santa Clara, Windsor, Connecticut, and also I'm sure most of you are aware, most recently Ithaca. I will end with a Benjamin Franklin quote that's been shared with me extensively around this topic. Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. And I believe that it's our responsibility to act with integrity and try to protect liberty and safety. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Erin Good. I am also opposed to the flock cameras in the village and would like to see them removed.
Hi, I'm Erin Zabo. I have a flock camera that I drive by every day on Perry City Road, and it's facing empty fields at the moment. We all know that fields and farmland are often worked by immigrants. I'm concerned that these flock cameras may record workers of legal or illegal immigrants in our area. It is a civil matter, it's not a criminal matter. So I personally do not want to be recorded every day as I go to work and come home. So I too am opposed to the flock cameras in and around the village of Trumansburg.
Janice Broussard, I live on 13 South Street. I'm a resident of Trumansburg and the petitioner and designated neighborhood representative for residents who signed the petition that was previously submitted to Jessica. Thank you for your time and your service to the village. In the petition we are submitting includes 98 signatures from village residents, along with 34 additional supporters from the surrounding community. These signatures reflect neighbors who care deeply about the long-term stability of residential zoning on Elm Street. Eventually, I will turn it over to Mark Bouchard, sitting next to me, who will speak as a designated neighborhood representative and will present the second half of our remarks and outline several practical guardrails neighbors are asking the village to consider as this process moves forward. The petition respectfully requests that the village deny the proposed rezoning of 14 and 16 Elm Street from residential to mixed use. Let me repeat that. We ask that it deny the proposed rezoning. Our concern is straightforward. Rezoning is permanent and runs with the land. Projects may change, ownership may change, but zoning rights remain in place and they can be exercised by future owners in ways the neighborhood cannot predict and the village may not be able to easily reverse. In other words, a permanent zoning change transfers long-term land use risk from a single property to the surrounding neighborhood. We also recognize that the discussion may now be shifting away from rezoning and toward defining what an INN, within a residential district might look like. We appreciate the village's effort to carefully consider options. If the village chooses that route, we respectfully ask that any definition be crafted so that the residential character remains paramount and the village does not unintentionally create something that effectively functions like rezoning under a different name. There's also an important planning principle that applies here. Zoning decisions are meant to guide long-term community planning, not response to the needs of a particular project. Neighbors strongly support preserving the historic character of 16 Elm, which is architecturally distinct, a large historic mansion whose scale and configuration set it apart. At the same time, 14 Elm is a traditional single-family home that reflects the normal residential fabric of this block. That distinction matters. If flexibility is considered, it should be clearly tied to the unique physical characteristics of an exceptional historic structure, not framed in a way that could later be applied to typical homes on Elm Street or elsewhere in the village. At this time, we are here to discuss the petition that has been submitted, and I'm going to turn this over for the second part to Mark Bouchard.
So good evening. My name is Mark Bouchard, and I'm speaking as a designated neighborhood representative in support of the petitioners. I grew up on Elm Street and graduated from Trumansburg in 1985. I joined Morris Chain, which is Trumansburg founded, which took me away from the area. But during that absence, I maintained connection to this community through family, friends, and coworkers. When I returned to the U.S. in 2015, I returned with my young family to T-Burg, and we currently reside at 2 Wig Street. Having that connection to this area, I would like to build on Janice's remarks by focusing on several practical concerns neighbors hope the village will consider as it evaluates possible policy approaches. First, we respectfully ask that the village street 16 Elm and 14 Elm as separate properties and with separate land use questions, not as a combined site. 16 Elm is a uniquely scaled historic mansion. 14 Elm is a typical single-family residence that represents the residential character of this block. If policy blurs that distinction by combining the properties, it increases the risk that a definition intended for a unique structure like 16 Elm could gradually expand to include ordinary homes. For that reason, we ask that the village make the intent explicit. 14 Elm should remain a residence and continue to be evaluated and regulated as a residence. Second, neighbors are concerned about what often happens and occurs over time in land use decisions, what planners sometimes refer to as intensity creep. This concern is not about any individual person or in any individual project. It reflects a common planning pattern. Higher intensity uses can gradually create operational pressures such as parking overflow, guest circulation, deliveries, staffing needs, increased activity, tear to the infrastructure over time. So clear policy boundaries and operational guidelines and guide rails must be established up front. If flexibility is created for the unique structure like 16 Elm, it should not become a stepping stone that gradually reshapes the residential area. Third, and we want to make this point very clear and on the record, neighbors strongly oppose the introduction of liquor license associated with any lodging operation in this residential setting. Alcohol service commonly increases intensity, including traffic, late night activity, and enforcement complexity, conflicting with what residents reasonably expect on a residential street and impact the quality of life. I highlighted my firsthand Elm Street experience with this issue during my initial board presentation a few months ago. Neighbors strongly support protecting the historical character of 16 Elm. If flexibility is considered because of the building's historical nature, we respectfully suggest that preservation should be binding, not only aspirational. So in other words, any flexibility tied to the historic attributes of 16 Elm should be paired with legal historic preservation protections that endure over time. Finally, if the village proceeds with defining 16 Elm as an inn within this residential district, we respectfully ask that the policy definition removes ambiguity by including clear and enforceable guidelines, such as eligibility criteria tied to the unique building characteristics, clear limits on guest rooms and lodging units, limits on events and outdoor activities, enforceable standards for parking, traffic, and deliveries, explicit consideration of alcohol-related impacts, clear enforcement mechanisms focused on the objective of preserving the residential character of Elm Street. We appreciate the board's thoughtful consideration and your responsibility to take the long view on land use decisions. Our request is simply that the village preserve residential zoning on Elm Street and ensure that any policy decision made here remain clear, consistent, enforceable, and durable for the future. Because ultimately, zoning decisions do not affect a single project or a single point in time. They shape the long-term character of the neighborhood and the planning framework of the village itself. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Other public comment in person or online? Put you in charge of the mic, James.
It's okay, you're good.
No, it's. Other public comments. Going once, we do have a second public comment period at the end of the meeting. For those who choose to stick around. Item number 5 on our agenda is a public hearing. Public hearing is has a legal definition. It is required anytime we adopt local law. Since 2012, I think it was, whenever former Governor Cuomo was successful in passing the so-called tax cap, municipalities have the option of overriding said tax cap each year with a local law, and that is what we will be considering this evening, as we have every single year since 2012. And so I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing on proposed local law D1 2026, which is our tax cap override. So moved. We have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And so the public hearing is now open. Bless you. If anyone has any comment on our proposed tax cap override, please feel free. And again, if you're online and would like to comment, there's a raise hand button. Where did they move the raise hand?
Yeah,
I don't think we have one of those.
you may not want to have one.
Didn't work last.
Yeah, it was. huh. I could, if you can't find the raise hand button, you can wave your hand at the screen and.
Provide a little detail on what this is.
So New York State imposes a cap on how much a municipality can increase its tax levy by each year. It's a function, it's 2% or some calculation based on consumer price index. What that effectively does is it restricts municipalities from giving employees raises. If we want to do a 3% raise and most of our budget is payroll, then we have to override the tax cap. If, and as is in our case, we have an EMS department with a 400 square mile coverage area, then we have budgeting problems if we have to stay within the tax cap. So some years it's been a practical need to raise it. Some years it's been essentially the village's version of a protest vote. With all due respect to our friends in Albany, some of whom I actually got to meet today. They have no idea what it takes to run a small municipality. So the tax cap is something that was, again, a tool that was used 14 years ago now to try to get costs down in New York State. I'll leave it to everyone else to decide whether that's worked or not. We have passed the tax cap override every year since 2012. We have not needed to raise our tax levy beyond the tax cap every single year, but we've passed the override anyway to give us the flexibility to do so.
Well, I won't go to that.
Any other comment?
Are you putting it out for opposition?
Any comment you would like to make on whether we override the tax cap or not is fair game.
Say you not needed to do it since 2012.
We have needed to do it many years, but not every year.
And the tax burden is going to be borne by property taxes.
Correct.
Do you know what oppose that? I think the taxes in this town specifically are very high considering relative to other, I don't know about local counties, but 3% tax is kind of on the high end, I think.
Bearing in mind, this is only the village's tax
Right.
bill. We don't control school taxes. We don't control county. Just by way of background, of your entire property tax bill, roughly 63% of it is school. We account for about 20% of your total property tax burden. We supply, I want to say 100% of the local services you receive, but of course the county does provide some as well. And so the reason, just again, not trying to change your mind, but between police, fire, EMS, DPW, we have costs that go up every year. And usually, even if it's only payroll increases in the 3% range, that puts us over the very limiting tax cap. So thus the proposal to override it as we do or have had previous years. But appreciate the comments. New York State is very expensive to live in.
Roy, okay. Yeah, I understand that the EMS is covering a very large territory, as you said. There's obviously a need for that service. And this is something that I've heard several residents having conversations about how they've needed to have these services show up at their house, and instead of having the services they're paying taxes on, they're having other companies like separate from the service they're paying their taxes for. They're not available, so they're having to then go and pay. They're getting charged really high EMS charges to be able to get the services, and then there's these huge bills. So can you talk a little bit about how this might tie into what you're proposing, or if you get on the table to be able to increase that? Would that help the local residents that are actually relying on these services when we're spread so thin with our territory being so large and such a limited resource?
Yeah, it's a little bit outside the scope of this particular public hearing, but I would say that for those residents, there have been times in the past and we're actually going back several years, but there have been times in the past when other agencies have responded into, particularly Covert Hector and the town of Ulysses, to respond for calls that Trumansburg EMS might have normally taken. So this concept of mutual aid, where one agency will cover for another if the other one is busy or has staffing issues or has multiple calls happening at the same time. Over the last several years, that has not happened very often. So not to say that, you know, the individuals that you've spoken with weren't one of the small number of outside agency mutual aid. I don't want to say that that didn't happen. But for example, and I didn't bring the sheet with me, but last year we rendered mutual aid outside of our territory about 187 times. We received mutual aid 24 times. So that means 24 times people got an ambulance visit than there was at Trumansburg, and that's unfortunate. All 24 of those times, however, was what we refer to as a second call. So Trumansburg EMS was on a call, another call comes in, so another agency has to cover. It is not our intention, although it's not impossible because none of us has a crystal ball. It's not our intention to grow our EMS department to this place where we're staffing 2 and 3 ambulances full time. Is that going to happen? Maybe, but that's not our intention. However, staffing in such a way that we can accommodate additional network strain is something that we have a responsibility to do. And so the short answer is this all is interconnected and it plays together. And unfortunately, because we are a small municipality, that means we are bearing an outsized burden when it comes to that particular service. It's one of the reasons why we work with, or have been working with Tompkins County to try to improve their capacity to potentially step into some of these stress points. I could spend the next hour talking about this. My hope is that our agency will be strong enough to provide the services that we've contracted to provide to the surrounding towns and to the village without a whole lot of mission creep. For that to happen, there's going to need to be some additional help from elsewhere. Any other comment on our proposed tax cap override local law?
If they're saying that's going primarily to big people working for the town phrases.
78% of our budget is payroll. So yes, so we do generally budget for, this year we budgeted for a 3% raise. Our DPW is a union, so they have a contract where we've negotiated their wages. So the lion's share, roughly 3/4 of our budget is payroll and payroll related. So health insurance, state retirement, and so on.
One thing just to clarify quickly is that the tax cap override is separate from the budget itself, right? So the tax cap override is something, as Roden said, we pass every year, regardless of whether our budget actually calls for it. We will have budget meetings elsewhere, and you're welcome to like sort of dig down into what is what and the why behind it. This is, I don't want to overemphasize this, but at least in my mind, this is much more of a protest vote than a practical necessity. The idea that Albany tells us what we can do with our taxes is wild, frankly. But I would encourage everyone who's interested, and I do every year, to come and check out our budget. It is publicly available. We can share it. And any one of us would be happy to walk you through sort of what each line item means and why it's there and kind of what the purpose is. It is one of the pains of my existence as a municipal official that one of the primary foundational decisions that we make every year gets the least interest from the public. So if you have any interest, please reach out and happy to sort of talk through that.
And the budget's online too.
Yeah, to Ben's point, we've had 3 budget meetings and we'll be discussing the budget tonight. So tonight would be number 4. And you all are the first people to be here. And I'll be curious to see if any of you stick around.
It's so much fun.
I get it. Numbers and budgets are dry and mostly boring, but it is the one It is the one thing that controls everything the municipality does. Other public comment on proposed local law D1 of 2026. There you go.
Working on the speaker. Okay.
If there's, yes, Chance.
Say that sometimes I watch the meetings, but we do it on YouTube village thing, and I think somehow that should be advertised. Because sometimes you don't feel like coming here, you want to sit in your own house and, you know, think while you're doing it or listening, I don't know. And I, Jessica told me, so that's. why.
Yeah, if you go online and click under the budget meeting, then the link for the YouTube, the recording will come up. So you can sit home and watch it live.
Which I do. sometimes. Well, I don't need to make any, I'm not gonna make a comment if I come. Cause I don't know how to do the other stuff. It's just.
All right, if there's no additional public comment on the text. She's looking for ways to cut our budget.
Cut our budget with that.
I would then entertain a motion to close the public hearing on local law D1 of 2026.
So moved.
We have a second? Did we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, I would then entertain a motion to approve and adopt as presented local law D1 of 2026. Would someone like to move that?
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
Comments from the board?
Nothing beyond what we've already talked.
Talked about.
You've
got it.
I'm not in there. I could join and try and. Yeah, you could.
There she goes.
Yeah, it was fine.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments from the board? Proposed local law D1 of 2026. Hearing none, then all in favor of approving and adopting proposed local law D1 of 2026, our tax cap override, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Good. Thank you, everybody. Item number 6, reports from this board. We'll start with, where's that, Jess?
It should be labels, yeah,
What's in there, the word doc?
it's right under the agenda packet. Good job.
Let's see.
See the folder. It's in two packets. 6 a.m.
We have a resolution for consideration to go to Governor Hochul's office encouraging or in favor of an increase in state assistance to municipalities funding. Simple resolution or simple letter of support. The governor has included additional funding in her proposed budget for this year. I believe the one house budgets will be released next week, so we'll see if her recommendation survives the Assembly and the Senate. But this is certainly our way of saying that of the $262 billion that's proposed for New York State to spend next year, that more than $12,500 of that can come to the village of Trumansburg would be a big help. And so I would entertain a motion to support or to approve and support this resolution in support of additional AIM funding. If someone would like to move that.
Yes, so moved.
Second,
Comments, questions?
is this a board action or is this an authorize you to sign action?
I will send it from the board.
Board.
Other comments or questions? Hearing none, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? We have a budget modification for the budget year ending May 31, 2025.
That was just their friend.
Yeah, do you have the number though? The dollar amount? But I don't have that handy.
Yes.
Unless we do it in April when we adopt next year's budget, we'll do the final budget months.
Or you can do it then, and we're going to.
Are there no other lines that are changing? Individual lines?
Individual line.
So let's do a final budget month with all of it in one.
Okay. I sent a proposal for the individual lines to Dwayne, just have time to back.
Yeah, so once he gets back with the individual lines, we can package everything up. So we're gonna table that second item under my report. Couple of additional items for public. For me to comment publicly, we had Ben Carver was with me this morning. We had a nice ceremony across the street at Ulysses Town Hall. Acting New York State Parks Commissioner Kathy Mosier came down to visit with us and officially released the name of the new state park at the former Boy Scout camp at Camp Barton. The name is now officially Three Falls State Park in honor of the three waterfalls on property. As well as, coincidentally enough, the three municipalities in the town of Ulysses, Covert, and the village of Trumansburg that came together to form the local development corporation that will be managing it. That was a very nice event. We had representatives from the governor's office, Assembly Member Kellis's office. I think Senator, did Leah send a rep? I didn't see Leah's. Sure. And so this, although it's a culmination of what is almost a 4-year project to get to this point, it's also the beginning of kind of next steps. So we, in conjunction with the announcement today, we have released the draft. What's
Concept?
Conceptual plan. Can't call it a comprehensive plan, and we can't call it a master plan. It is a draft conceptual plan for the property. We will be linking to it on our website, on the village website, as well as on the website for the LDC, which is Three Falls, that's three spelled out, threefalls.org. It is a very in-depth 10 to 15 year window into what we hope the property can become. It is in draft form. It is under review by State Parks offices in Albany. So there's always the potential for changes. But it does give us a starting point to say this is kind of what we hope the property will be used for. This is what we hope the property will look like. These are the buildings which need to be ripped out. These are the buildings that need to be renovated. Here's where parking is going to go. Here's where the trails are going to go. Here are the trails we're removing. There's a nesting peregrine's nest in the gorge, so that involves DEC and certain protections for the birds. Here's what the waterfront is going to look like. So it's although it's not called a comprehensive plan, it is very, very comprehensive, and we are interested in public feedback. Although once Albany kind of blesses it, it'll be difficult to make any substantive changes, but we certainly want to know what folks think about it, because the plan itself was put together from the several opportunities for public engagement and comments and feedback that we got at that time. So kind of a landmark day. It's last year was the 100th anniversary of the acquisition of Taganic Falls State Park by New York State. So a century later, we have another state park on this side of Cuba Lake. Anything you wanted to add from this morning?
Just to reiterate that it does really feel like a landmark day. I think this is a once in a generation opportunity. I know none of you all are here for this specifically, but I'm happy that you're here nonetheless, because usually these announcements get made to an empty room. So I'm really grateful that there are people here to hear it. I think the one tidbit that I will share, other than that it was really a pretty fabulous event, it's always nice to get Albany's attention in a good way. But the sense we got from the park staff was that we had been pushing them, right? That we accelerated their time frame. And I think for us, 4 years in with, you know, nothing but really paper to show for it, it felt like it's been, I don't want to say frustrating, it's definitely been really gratifying and really very thankful to be here. But it was nice to hear that we accelerated their time frame, that we made some meaningful impact in terms of moving that train a little bit faster on the tracks. But it was a very nice event. I'm really very excited that it's moving forward.
Yeah, not only did we learn that what we thought was slow is actually accelerated. But we are the only organization of its kind in the state. So there are other local development corporations, but none of them have partnered to manage a state property. So it is one of the things, I'm supposed to say acting commissioner, because she hasn't been approved by the Senate yet. But one of the things that Commissioner Moser said was that there are other areas where the state is considering acquiring property to become a park. But like this one, they don't have the capacity to staff it. So they're actually looking at our effort as a potential model for some of these other locations. So that's nice to hear that our efforts were, although we may have been guinea pigs, maybe other areas in the state can benefit from our efforts.
Thank you for all your work you've done on that. Conserving this lakefront property for our future children and grandchildren and generations to come is so important.
I don't know, was anybody recording?
Yes.
Yes, there was someone was filming. I didn't catch the station.
I didn't catch the station.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to release the whole thing. One of the things I said in my remarks this morning is, I think it's fairly well known, although I don't know that everybody knows. Well over 90%, I think it's 94%. Well over 90% of Kugel Lake property is privately owned. So there's just very, very little public access to the lake. And with, you know, speaking of property taxes and property values, with everything being very expensive particularly in this part of the state, it can be difficult to be able to utilize and explore and enjoy it's my favorite of the Finger Lakes, but I'm biased.
It's the best. It's okay. We can make that official.
So it's gratifying that we were able to get this pulled together, because initially it was something that probably wasn't going to happen. So we're glad that we were able to pull that together. And then my only other comment is my only other item is that we had discussed kind of in passing a couple of months ago, but I would like to formally announce that the village will be moving forward with the dedication of the farmers market area in memory of the late Bruce Van, who was our longtime DPW supervisor, lifelong local resident, who personally gave a lot of his time and attention to the farmers market. And what I will be doing is Ben and I will be speaking with Dusty and Clint of our DPW. And then I have one in particular, maybe two volunteers that I'd like to ask to help design what this might look like, whether it's just additional signage or something on site that is in keeping with what the farmers market currently looks like, but will be a very obvious dedication to Bruce and his legacy of service to the village. So that's kind of our formal announcement that that's what we'll be doing. We'll have some type of a ceremony, I'm hoping May or June, sometime this summer, probably on a farmer's market Wednesday night, where we can do a ribbon cutting with the family and properly dedicate the park to Bruce's memory. And with that, we'll move on to fire. Marcia.
quick and simple. We had 15 calls, one of our quietest months this year, and there was nothing really worth discussing.
Okay.
Other than their typical training and all the work that they do and getting OSHA certified and everything, so.
Yeah, when it comes to emergency services, quiet is okay.
Yes.
EMS Youth Street Tree Advisor. When I did already push the EMS specific.
Oh,
The
great,
April.
great, thank you. So I'll start with youth. Spring recreation programming, which is now run by the town, will be starting imminently. The one piece I wanted to highlight for those of you here with kids who are in camp and for anyone listening, is that the town has worked very hard to increase the number of available signups for camp this year, and to streamline the sign process. Last year, we had a lot of people that had refresh problems who couldn't sign in. It was really a struggle. So the sort of world of third-party software facilitation for things like this is always a little bit hairy, but they have done, I think, a really good job, at least of trying to make that better. So fingers crossed this year goes smoother. But we'll see. I'm hoping that between more slots for campers and a better sign-up process, we will see much better results. For EMS, I'm actually going to defer the medical director discussion a little bit to executive session because I want to talk very specifically about specific candidates there. But for the public, I will just note that Dr. Drew Koch, who has been our longtime medical director for the EMS department, has expressed an interest to step down. So we're investigating some other options and other people will take on that role. Dr. Koch has been really, really fabulous for a long, long time for our EMS department. Medical director essentially oversees the medical practice, right, component of an EMS facility. He's been, I think, very involved, particularly with Joel directly in terms of advising on training, taking some of the sort of more difficult circumstances and reviewing them, and has done all of that and more, frankly, that I'm not even really aware of, at just a bare fraction of the cost of what that service generally requires. So we will miss him dearly, both from a financial perspective, a personal perspective, and a professional perspective. But we will move on. Joel has a number of other candidates that, like I said, we'll discuss in executive session in greater particulars, but just so people are aware in general. And I'll end just with the call report, assuming I can bring it up. So for February, we have 8 in the town of Coburg, 1 in the town of Enfield, 8 in the town of Hector, 2 in Interlake, and 2 in the city of Ithaca, 3 in the town of Ithaca, 1 in Lodi, 4 in Mecklenburg, 2 in Newfield, 3 Ovid, 2 Romulus, 27 in the village, and 12 in the town of Ulysses, for a total of 75. So somewhat under our average calls for the month, but of course February is so much short, so that's not terribly surprising. And that'll do it for me. Oh, actually, wait 1 second. Jess, did you add the permissive referendum?
I did make the agenda. Yeah, so you could ask for, I didn't get the document, I want to make type,
That's
but you
good.
could
Okay.
ask for up to 3,000. Oh.
Okay, and it's the equipment reserve?
To finish completing the third. The treasure is able to.
Was it vehicle? Okay. So sorry to switch gears right there. I almost forgot this piece, but this is actually one to add to the agenda. Last month we approved a spend for a stretcher, but we had the number wrong. So we basically need to do a new permissive referendum to increase that number by up to $3,000 in order to cover. It's really basically shipping costs and a little bit of an upgrade that's unfortunately necessary. But that's it. So I would move that we approve up to $3,000 to outfit ambulance with stretcher and necessary components for up to $3,000 from the vehicle reserve, subject to permissive referendum.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Comments, questions? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Yeah.
Any abstentions? Okay. I will just say, I'll just add, because I can't help myself, to Ben's comments about Dr. Koch, since we have 15 more people than we normally have at our meetings. If ever anyone is interested in the complexity and the reason why ambulance is so expensive and the reason why no one else wants to do it, it's reasons like that. It is a medical agency. It's a medical agency that requires the oversight of a practicing physician who is not a village employee. They're contracted separately. It's regulated by DOH. Fire departments and police departments are a breeze by comparison. So it's the reason, it's one of many reasons why you see ambulance companies closing around New York State. In 2007, we had 1,400, I believe, ambulance agencies in New York State. Now we're right around 1,000 and trending in the wrong direction. So if and when the time comes that we need public advocacy at the county or state level for more, we'll certainly be reaching out to all of you. DPW, water, sewer, CPZR, and farmers market.
Yes, so I'm gonna start with the CPZR and zoning update, since I know people are curious about that. Yeah, I do need to be co-host, and I don't see the raised hand. Oh, I see, it's under react. Well,
React.
you have to react and then raise hand, so if people were trying to do that, that's how you find it. That's unfortunate, they've moved it around. All right, so I'm gonna start with, let's see. Let me start with a little bit of background and then I'll get into sharing things. So we passed the updated residential zoning in 2023. And since about that time or slightly before, there was a little bit of parallel working. The comprehensive plan and zoning revision committee has been looking at the next section of our zoning to be updated to reflect the comprehensive plan, which is the commercial district. So in the past, now it's been 2, maybe a little bit more years. That's been the focus of the CPZR's work. And at this point, that is at a solid first draft. There are definitely still some definitions that are being tweaked and improved. But the bulk of the work is at a good spot, and the committee is now passing it back to this board for kind of early feedback and comments. It's possible that we like everything we see, and that makes things easy and we can kind of move forward from here. Just for anyone listening, the process for updating zoning is not particularly quick. There's review from the county, there's environmental review, there is a law passing process, as we saw earlier in this meeting, with public hearing and so forth. So there's a lot of pieces to it, but we could, at this board, decide changes look pretty good, we could move forward. What I would like to see for the next couple of months is take this draft, we all sit with it here, pass it to the planning board, the zoning board, our attorney as well, to get early comment, potentially code enforcement. I hadn't thought, but that's probably a good one to also add to the list. And start to collect any feedback that we have. Also, if there's people in the community, we'll post all of this stuff online, send feedback and comments here, either in public comment sections or by email. Basically just kind of do a big collection of any sort of feedback, and then we can assess at our May meeting, do we want to kind of proceed forward on looking to adopt? Do we want to send it back to the CPZR with comments, or ask the CPZR to work through the comments themselves? We have a different couple of options, but in my mind, this now sits with us and we kind of get to decide where the next steps lie with that. So to that end, I wanted to talk through kind of the very high level pieces. I'm not going to get into the details. I don't think that's the best use of our time, but there are documents that are in the Dropbox, and again, we'll put these online, that are both kind of a draft version as well as another draft version that has comments kind of to the side. The comments are a little high level themselves, but they're kind of pointing out the key parts of what changed and a little bit of why besides them. And there's also a FAQ document kind of with an executive summary, what are the changes and some questions in there. And I'll show a little bit of that as we walk through tonight. So that's kind of to set the table. To talk a little bit about like, what is the goal here? I talked about this coming from the comprehensive plan. That process started 8+ years ago now, around 8 years ago, and had feedback and input from the community that worked into that comprehensive plan to include a set of goals and a set of action items that came out of that. And so that is really the core guiding document that goes into the zoning. It talks about what do we want to see on Main Street? How do we want to think about our historic downtown core? Those sorts of things. And then the comprehensive plan, or the CPZR committee, looks at that in concert with trying to have a little bit of a vision or a sense of where the village might incrementally grow over the next many decades. I like to talk about zoning taking quite a long view, many tens of years, 50 years potentially, of not what's going to change tomorrow, but what do we think might want to happen over time, and where can we allow some of that to happen more organically, and where do we want to prevent other pieces, right? So it's not just, it's what came out of the comprehensive plan and then trying to project forward a little bit and build something that'll let us grow over time. So you'll kind of see those two pieces played out through some of the proposals. So and maybe just to say too, like when I think about what came out of the comprehensive plan, I think the core of that is people love the existing downtown. They love the historic district, or that it's not a historic district. They love the historic buildings. They love the pedestrian friendly area. And so a lot of this is continuing to encourage more of that. Should any of those buildings have to be taken down for any reason or whatever, to build more like it. If there was additional building around it, again, more of the same. And to push back against very auto-centric sort of development, large box stores, that sort of thing, things that don't feel like they're in kind of keeping with the village. So those are kind of the guiding principles. There's a bunch of different action items and whatnot coming out of the comp plan that anyone can kind of feel free to dig into, but like that's the theme largely that I think came out of the comprehensive plan. So then to say a little bit more, let's see, I'm gonna do the first big, kind of the biggest change I would say is just rethinking the zones for commercial. And so that is best seen here. Currently today, might have been helpful to show kind of a before and after, but I don't have the before on me right now at the second. I can zoom in a little bit more. The red area is the current downtown core, and that largely remains the same. That district doesn't change its boundaries. We do go into, some changes to the specifics in there, but as far as a map view, the district stays the same. In the current zoning, there is this section here where there's Not My Dad's and the Falls and so forth, is also a commercial district. Slightly different than the core, but is still has commercial availability. The larger change is the introduction of this neighborhood mixed use. And that's what you see around the rest of Main Street. And that is recognizing that, as you think about a typical village slowly incrementally building over time, it is typically that Main Street that starts to see a little bit more that grows up. And really already that's happening. Right? When you think about, we have a bunch of it over here with Burn Dairy and so forth. We have, B&Bs in here. We have the school. We have kind of a flower business over here. There's a lot that kind of already starts to feel like this. And so this is allowing a little bit of incremental flexibility there for a small, for a house to turn into a doctor's office or a law firm or something, a law office or something like that. a small cafe, you know, like a handful of tables, that sort of a thing. The details are really important because that can sound like a huge shift, but you can look at what's actually allowed by right, and it's quite small. It's like a 300 square foot restaurant, you know, which is really just a micro cafe. It's kind of like a creekside, but now it could be somewhere else on Main Street. So that's the intention there, is kind of recognizing that this is already happening. We have a acupuncture, massage or something up here. We've got the firehouse up here. So it's just like allowing a little bit more of that to happen without there being a site plan review and a large kind of review. That's the intention there. So I'd say that's kind of one of the larger changes. I'm curious, I'll be curious to hear more feedback as we think into this and the community thinks into it. It is a shift, but it's put together specifically to be a very small shift. And I think that shows out in the actual details of what would be allowed there. Let's see, the other thing that I think is worth walking through.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Just west of Compass. What was that zone? Those fields?
It's like light industrial. I actually
Yeah,
was looking
that,
at
oh
that
yeah,
too.
sorry. So that I can share that back out.
The same or?
That is the same, and industrial will be the next thing that we look at, but that is, yeah, that is light industrial over here. And I was only just starting to look at it because we'll start looking at industrial with the CBZR, but there's like a mixed industrial here, which I think allows for a little more residential use potentially as well. This is more kind of light industrial without that kind of mixed element to it. Currently there's nothing there, right? Yeah.
It's a farm.
Yeah.
Actively farmed.
Oh, actively farmed. Interesting. I think industrial is going to be kind of interesting, to be honest, but we're not there yet, so I won't get out ahead of myself.
I just didn't know if you attached anything new to that.
The only difference you'll see in the current zoning is that there is in this section here another commercial district, one of the gateways, and it very unclear to me exactly what the thought process there was, but it seems to be kind of built for like a small shopping center kind of strip mall.
Was the word that was original.
I mean, it kind of looks like that when you look at it. Didn't seem like that was, we did take that out. That is actually probably worth calling out more explicitly. That is not there anymore. And so this would continue just to be the residential zone in there. Then just to walk through, so this is, I'll make this larger just to kind of orient people in some of the documents. So this is that frequently asked questions sort of document that will be shared around as well. But I wanted to mostly draw people's attention to the executive summary at the top. So this kind of follows through and just briefly touches on the core changes that were proposed. That new zoning district is mostly what we've just talked through. The allowed uses table, this is driven primarily from a real concern from the committee that our uses tables are split up in a bunch of different places, rather difficult for any one human to put their head around. Maybe made more easy for the zoning officer to deal with, but like that's not quite right not the best way to optimize for in this, in our opinion. So this is starting to pull all of these tables into one place. We have not included the industrial yet because we haven't gotten there, but everything else, residential and the two different commercial zones are in there. I think it makes for a much easier read. We also spent a considerable amount of time trying to simplify the uses that are in there. There are, especially when you look at between commercial and industrial and all the different weird sub uses that they're in there, it's quite a bit. So we've gone towards more of a standard set of uses that are a little more broad, but I think gives us the flexibility that we need. So it's not, we didn't combine really wildly different uses together, but there's a lot of very similar uses that there's no reason to separate them. We weren't regulating them any differently. So we've grouped them together. I think one thing that I would call out, and it's called out here, is in some of the broader categories like retail sales, we've actually broken it down into small, medium, and large by size. And I think that's a really useful way to think about how to regulate these things. It's not that we do want retail sale here and not there. But it is true that we want smaller ones in some areas and could understand having medium or larger ones in other areas. So we've done more on thinking about the intensity of the use and where that makes sense, rather than thinking just about the use as one kind of undifferentiated piece. And so this is part of what lets us make that distinction between, you know, you might not allow any retail sale in the residential, but small, less than 500 or 1,000 square feet or something in that neighborhood Main Street area, and then maybe medium or large in the downtown core. So like that's kind of the broader thought process that has gone into this use case.
So like, for instance, across from the village office, that big brick home, I know I could say who lived there, but that was 100 years ago, so I have to watch myself. But the big brick house that now has apartments in it,
Yep.
that's right, you know, there's the driveway, the
Yeah,
Mason
yeah.
building, and then that building.
Mhm.
We used to have a beautiful gift shop in there called Black Sheep. So is that what you're proposing?
Yeah.
That you would be able to use like a residential area for something like
Yeah.
that?
That one actually happens to be in the downtown core.
So that would be.
So that's available to a larger range of uses.
Okay.
But I think a good one is the flower shop just past, kind of across the street from the Methodist church. The Don Schlather's shop, I don't know.
Let's do that.
Right, and.
The plant shop.
The plant
Yep, yep,
shop,
gotcha.
sorry, not flower, yes, the plant shop.
Okay.
And also I think salmon pottery.
Salmon pottery. Okay,
both-
that type of
Are
thing.
both the good examples of it's residential, but it's on Main Street. You know, there's kind of living and like a little bit of retail
Right.
there. It fits in very nicely in that area, and that's keeping that size down, I think makes it fit well into those areas.
Yeah, and it makes it kind of like cool and eclectic, and you get, you know, your art people that can do their thing, and
And that's how you end up
it's a
seeing.
nice draw. I mean.
Yeah, it's really true. And you end up seeing in a lot of main streets, that's what happens.
Yeah.
Eventually, some of those houses switch over, they become a bit of a business. Maybe they live upstairs, those sorts of things. So allowing that flexibility without having to go through a site plan review and a whole kind of big thing. That's kind of the main thought there. Dimensional requirements, this is kind of how you practically make things feel smaller scale, pedestrians friendly. It's about having buildings come closer to the sidewalk instead of being set back with a lot of parking in front. The parking should be in the back. It's allowing smaller footprint buildings, so you have just kind of variability in different size buildings coming through instead of just one big massive blank wall that you walk through. So it's encouraging that kind of more fine-grained development. And then it's also encouraging, keeping out those larger box store sorts of design and architecture. The design requirements is the first time we're actually having true design requirements. There was kind of a placeholder, and then there will be design requirements in the last zoning. That never came to fruition. But this is where we can go even that sense a little tighter with not just how big is the building, where does it sit on the in relationship to the road. It is, do you have windows that allow you to see in and have it feel like an actual place you can relate to as a pedestrian? Does it have a door that actually welcomes you in instead of it being around the back or something? It's, some architectural details around having there's things I learned about like where you can separate the fourth floor and the third floor, the second and third floor, where you'll notice now all of a sudden you see them everywhere. How it just like makes a visual difference to your sense as a person walking down the street, like the kind of size and shape of these buildings. So we spent a lot of time thinking through those things. They're not overwhelming. We didn't want to get to like the color of your shingles and that sort of a thing, but they are codifying some of the standard design elements that we already have, and really wanted to see more of that.
Yeah, that would be great if we had zoning back when that monstrosity down on Main Street next to Atlas went in.
Yeah.
Just the big,
Right.
if we'd have had,
Faceless box.
if we'd have had something like that, it could look
Right, it would have had been
nicer.
up to the road, the parking could have been in the back, we would have.
Yeah.
More of this, that, and the other thing, so.
So good to have this.
Parking standards we took a look at what we had, it was very detailed and really outdated, and so the new set is really standardizing on more recent parking studies, I guess, to know like what amount of parking does a place actually need or require? And currently already there's no requirements for parking in the downtown core. It doesn't, if we required parking for every new building that went down there, we wouldn't have new buildings. But this is actually going a little bit of a step further and saying, here's what the most you probably really ever reasonably need. And it's generous, but it's like, let's really not make more than that. Because unfortunately, the style these days is building it for like, you know, for Black Friday sort of levels of parking that never materialize. And so it's kind of actually putting a limit on that. We want to keep parking there and accessible and usable, but not overwhelming the downtown. Signs and lighting, this is kind of just, again, an update of what we already had, but wanting to modernize it, make sure it's really doing the work that we want it to do. There's been a lot of newer understanding of lighting, how to manage that effectively, ensure that it doesn't become overwhelming at night, those sorts of things. The ground floor residential in the downtown core, this is something that was called out actually in the comp plan. It's allowing downtown residential on the backside of the ground floor. And something we already have a lot on Main Street.
Mhm.
It was not allowed at all on the downtown, on the ground floor. And instead this is saying, if you've got commercial up front, who cares what the back half of the building looks like? The intention is you don't want someone's living room on Main Street, you're looking into their living room.
No, but if you had a business, you could definitely live in the back.
You can live in the back or you could rent out the back. So that was a pretty easy fix to allow a little more residential. And then the last one is lodging and inns. So this is the one that I think speaks to some of the comments we heard earlier. This is, as we were looking at lodgings and inn, that use table, lodging is now one of three types: a bed and breakfast, an inn, or a hotel, and there's definitions for those. And the change as it pertains to Elm Street is suggesting that and we already allow bed and breakfasts in the residential zone. The inn would now be allowed in the residential zone as well. That is 6 to 16 rooms and allows for, it has site plan review. So a lot of the kind of like squishy parts of how does parking look, how does this sort of that thing work on a property, that's really hard to regulate in a consistent way for every property. That's where site plan kind of fits in. But it calls out an allowance for incidental services and sales to primarily for people who are at the inn. So like not focused on bringing outside people in, though there could be some of that, but it's primarily for people who are already staying at the inn. So if you had if you had lunch and dinner available, primarily for people at the inn, if you had classes or some other concerts or something, primarily for people at the inn. So it calls out that is an allowed possibility, and then asks site plan to basically talk through what does that really mean. So the site plan gives the kind of actual guardrails, and the definition is there to kind of talk about what's possible so that site plan can then talk about
Right.
So it's talks about occasional events and services and sales primarily for the people at the inn. And so with that, the intention is to call those things out and then have site plan kind of put guardrails around them. It also does, we heard a little bit of a request to kind of take the character of the building itself into account. The way we've done that is to add side setback requirements, which is actually interesting because specifically on 16 Elm, it doesn't meet all of those side setbacks. There would need to be a variance or some other arrangement with Juniper Manor. But the way that it's situated, if you think about the building, it does feel like there's nothing right up next to it on either side. Does feel like there's quite a breadth of space on both ends. And that's intentional, that these are recognizing that the inn is a more intense use in a residential zone, wanting to give more space between that and any neighbors. So that side setback is greater for inns than other uses.
Gotcha.
And so that does actually, I think, limits it to very few buildings and lots in the village would automatically would have that by default. And I think other ones where it makes sense, I think we'll have to go for a variance, I think, in my opinion, but I can't speak for the zoning board, would make sense to give that variance. Based on the lot and location and so forth. But that's the way that we were kind of thinking of the comp plan committee was thinking about limiting and constraining the inn, recognizing it's a little bit more of an intense use than we've had. So that's a long way of saying the committee did spend, I think, 3 months talking about Elm Street in some depth, then went back and forth. And I think folks here heard all of those deliberations. There was a period of time where the conversation was leaning towards bringing that smaller neighborhood mixed use zone that we were talking about up a couple more lots and to include those zones. I think that's where the petition came from is in when we were kind of leaning that direction. Folks feeling pretty strongly that wasn't the way they wanted to see it go. And was in the last conversation last month where we kind of landed on this idea of, okay, let's allow inns as a use with site plan review, with these constraints, with the additional, setbacks to keep it buffered from other neighboring lots into the residential zone, and that as a solution or, a kind of answer to the question that we have in front of us. So that was quite a bit.
Yeah.
I do
That's a lot of
encourage
work.
I do encourage folks to take a look at kind of this executive summary. I think that's the key part. If you're so interested in looking at the details, like I said, there's the detailed law itself that people can look through. We'll put this all on the website. I might even cut me talking at this and put it up as well. And really do welcome feedback from obviously us as well as the community and other boards and so forth. And we'll kind of start slowly walking towards conversations of adoption or whatever comes before us. If there's any questions now, I'm also happy to kind of answer or talk any more about them.
In terms of timeline, are you thinking, so you might not be here for April?
I won't be here for April. I also figured April being our organizational meeting, probably a little too soon. So I'm thinking send this out now and give people the month and a half, 2 months to different boards to give feedback. I felt like last time the planning board felt a little rushed on that, so I want to give them a little more time. So the idea is to ask them for feedback by our May meeting. And then we can have that time to discuss here and then see where we want to take it from there.
Okay.
And it looks like you highlighted the changes. I'm looking at the document. So
Yeah.
when these are posted on the village website for the public to see, they can do the references that way.
Yeah.
Same changes.
Mhm.
Are you sending this packet out to the board or are you gonna send it out to the stakeholders you identified or do you? I'm just pointing you to the website.
I can send it out. Yeah.
I will just quickly say that I regret reading this now because that was such a better summary than reading it, but thank you to you. And that's, I don't know,
Yeah.
it'll be
It's a
interesting to
ton of
see how the discussion evolves, but right now, just thank you.
Yeah. Every time I look back at how long it's taken, I go, good Lord.
But you can't never look back.
But I mean, I really truly appreciate the level of conversation and depth we go to in that committee. It's really strong, well-functioning committee. And I'm so thankful that everyone continues to participate and hasn't just absolutely left in a screaming rage yet. So
It's the loop.
yeah.
Any other board comments for Ben? So we'll plan on reviewing it in as much depth as we can. You'll send it to ZBA?
Yeah.
And then we'll have our initial discussion at our May meeting. Good.
All right. The only other item of business I had was to briefly discuss the hydraulic water model quote or proposal that we received. This is from MRB. This is with an eye towards our upcoming budget. So it would not be in this year's budget, but it was asking for a quote so that we could plan for next year's budget to work into this. Which then does make me wonder if we need to actually approve anything right now. We may not.
Going into the next year's budget.
Yeah. But I just kind of wanted to bring it up here to let people know. Just because it's a larger sum, it would, for everyone listening, it's $28,000 in our next year's budget. This is I'll explain just briefly. It's a hydraulic model for our water system. This is kind of the key, like we've done a lot of work with our sewer system. And because they're larger pipes, you can actually put a camera down there and you can drive around. You can look at what's the actual quality of those pipes and know where we need to replace pipes, where we're concerned about things. This, in my mind, is kind of an analog for that in the water system. You can't obviously put a camera or a robot down in the water pipes. They're not big enough and there's water in them. So this instead is building kind of a model of our system, understanding pressure and flow, testing at different areas, and maybe at fire hydrants and so forth, to understand kind of the pressures and constraints within the system. That allows us to then model where might we be looking at the most wear and tear in the system. Where do we have capacity to extend the system? Should we need to? Where do we not have that system? Where would we have to add more infrastructure to be able to extend it in different areas? It kind of gives us this baseline underlying understanding of our water system to make better choices going forward. So it's not a small lift, but it's an important kind of fundamental piece of understanding and data, in my mind. And so it is all told $48,000. So it's quite a bit of money. We are splitting it up over 2 budget seasons. That's often how we do things, over 2 to 3 budget years, to smooth that out for ratepayers in this case, because this will come out of our water bills. But this, the first part of this, the 28,000, is what we'll be budgeting into our water budget. Maybe we'll even talk about it in the old business, depending on which sections we go through, but making sure that we have that already planned in the budget so that we can start executing on this next year, and then the following year we'll close out the project. So I guess there's nothing really else to say. Just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention, just due to the size of it. Otherwise, that's it. Oh, thank you. I did forget something else. Sorry, that was under new business. I'm jumping all over the place. My apologies. The thing I was supposed to talk about is our water meters. So everyone's got a meter on their water, meter for their water, and then there's a reader head that goes on top and allows the DPW to drive around and read everyone's meter remotely with a radio, with like a remote reader. Those all went in most of a decade or more, 15 years ago, something like that, depending on which ones. They are getting close to their end of life. And in particular, the ones that were installed at the very beginning are really starting to go. And the result there is that we can't reasonably read them. They don't work as well. That means people's bills are inaccurate, becomes a problem. So we're slowly working on the process to upgrade all of our reader heads to be cellular reads, which allows us to not have to drive around, but instead it uses a cellular radio to send that data back to a central location that we can then see. The benefit there to users is that we'll get a reading, I think, every 4 hours. That allows people to see if you've got a running toilet, all of a sudden you can see that in kind of real-ish time. And there's opportunities for us to do more with that as the system gets built out, possibly even alert people. There's a bunch of different opportunities. So we are starting on that process. There's a handful of folks that we're going to start with first. Letters will be sent out to those folks, or have been sent out, or in process. And we'll be asking those folks to start scheduling time with the DPW to come in and replace it. It's like a 10-minute pop the old one off, pop the new one in, but they do need to get access to, often usually the basement. So they need someone to allow them access there. I think that's kind of the big parts.
Yeah, so I think your intention with the budgeting is in the next 3 years to have all of the users turned on green cellular. So
yeah,
every current user will essentially be getting a letter in the next 3 years saying, you can schedule this time. But I also want to point out the excitement is not only the user to make sure that their water isn't. But it's gonna really decrease the cost of the labor to collect the reads, to deal with billing questions, to generate the report, to generate the bills, is a big savings.
Yeah, it gives the DPW more time to put towards better purposes than driving around the village with a remote reader. Yeah, so this will be happening over 3 years. That will be budgeting, again, going back to that, spreading the budget out over multiple years. They're a few $100s each, and we have we've got 800 or so in the village, so there's quite a bit of them. It'll be a fairly expensive endeavor, but I think it'll be well worth it for both DPW time and for the benefit of the constant read and what people can get to see that data as it happens. So everyone's, from now on, start keeping an eye out for these letters over the next couple of years.
Quick plug for those meters and like the user interface that you can access, so you can see Compass, you sort of have trial these, and it's fabulous. From a user's perspective, the vision you have into your water use feels benign and somewhat useless, and like, why would I care? And then when you have it, you can immediately pinpoint leaks, and when it happens, the degree and intensity of the leak, and all of those issues happen. Yeah, just basically automatically. It's
It's probably every couple of months we have someone ask about, why is my bill so high? What happened? How do
I
we
was just
find
gonna
out?
say, it'll save the front office some.
Right.
Meeting every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Fair.
Because they're just looking at it, so yeah.
Even more than that, and it's.
But it'll save people, I think, a considerable amount of money.
And save,
Right.
yeah, and save the money, and often the answer is, we can't really help you. Like, when you read once every 2 months, it's very hard to tell anybody what happened. But if we're reading every 4 hours, that's a very different story.
Yeah, so I'll be able to log in real time and watch my bill climb when the teenagers are in the shower. Is that what
Yeah.
Well, there's a 4-hour lag.
This is part.
All right, your 5 minutes are up. Get out.
We gotta cut that, we gotta make that real time.
And I think you said, Ben, but reiterating, this is something that needs to be replaced, and this isn't the
Yeah.
village deciding it wants fancy new gadgets.
These are all starting to slowly fail on us. So this is the better technology to jump to.
I think 2013 or 14 was the first batch.
Yeah.
Of
Took 3 or 4 years to get them all installed.
Yeah, when I started, we were still reading, with that.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
And just to say it up front, once we get to the point where most of these are in, and it will be a lot less work on the DPW, I'm anticipating getting to a point where there'll be a fee for reading if you aren't on the new system. So if you want a manual, or if you're unwilling to let the DPW in, there's, I think we'll get to a point there, just to kind of foreshadow for people that we will need to please help us get in there and make these changes.
I really hope that doesn't
We still have some people who have never gotten
happen. The radio.
old radio
really?
rates. Yeah. So
Okay.
it's not
Take
many,
it back.
it's not many, but I think it will. We have the carrot of please and all these wonderful things we just told you about, and then the stick eventually of, really, we need our time back.
Okay. Police, Joanna.
So for police, I do not have the chief's report. I was out for a while, out of the country for a while, and then chief was also out for a while, so I will have it for next month. We did receive a letter probably last week about a change in speed limit that was unclear, so I did speak to the chief today, and they did contact New York DOT. There is no change in the speed limit.
Okay.
So it's just a formality is what they explained. And when you look at the document, it's all 3 steps that they have to do in one, like signed in one day. So my thought is that it's probably them making sure that things are correctly done before they start the repaving on 96. So 20 miles per hour only during school hours. Yes. So that's that. There was an incident last week that the sheriff's department was heavily involved in with a missing child. Our police department did assist in any way that they could. Obviously, we're only one officer. So it was mostly providing space for the sheriff's department here in the village. And then that police officer was there if there was anything additional needed. That child was found safely. Let's see what else. So we did talk about the police department's webpage. So we are going to look at updating that webpage with current information available for people to review. We have noticed that some people may not know that there are local laws that are not the same as state, county laws, like the parking, like the snow parking type thing, parking off of the street, things like that. So we will be looking at updating the website and maybe looking at regular updates on our social media as well to make it more friendly to people. So we did talk about, regularly talking about Flock. We have not really used it this month. Same report as last month. There's obvious discussion around from listening earlier about Flock, whether it, what it actually does, how it affects our communities, how it affects the most vulnerable. And it seems like Flock, their reputation has deteriorated over time. They are being seen as a surveilled company or surveillance company. I would like to point out that there are at least 3 other companies that do the exact same thing. But they have the biggest spotlight and they have also not responded as clearly or responded to communities in a positive manner. So it may be something that we actually do need to consider as far as our continued use of Flock. Currently, our settings are very limited. They are set within our own village parameter. I think somebody spoke of another Flock camera pointing in a completely opposite direction of the village. That is not the village's cameras or license plate reader. The sheriff's department also has these cameras that are license plate readers that are available to our own village police department as well. So if we get rid of Flock, we also don't have the availability of help from the sheriff's department. So it could go, the one thing that I want to say is that I don't want to give people the false sense of hope that getting rid of these Flock cameras is also going to get rid of the problem, because it's not necessarily the Flock cameras that are the problem. I am very deeply concerned of our immigrant community, but this is not going to fix that. There's so many other things that are falling apart that are making those people more vulnerable. But that is my update on Flock, and I will be glad to take any questions from you guys. I mean, I don't know. As far as how we use the cameras, very seldom. That's really all I have for police.
Any comments or questions from the board for Joanna?
I haven't looked at our contract. I don't know if you've looked at any depth, like. My read from listening to Ithaca conversation is that they expressed their desire to cancel their contract at the earliest possible opportunity. My concern is that there is no earliest possible opportunity. That in their case, I think their contract's up this summer, so it's kind of not terribly long either which way. For us, it's till the end of next year. I guess I'm just curious if we've looked in at all at like, are there options? Because I think that's the biggest question to me. We can make a statement, we can say we like it or not, but there's really not a lot of opportunity to get out of it. Then I think what we're doing right now by constraining it and really using it as minimally as possible and sharing it with as few people as possible is the right way to manage all the different balancing points while we carry out until the renewal period and have a conversation then.
Right, yeah, I've asked Chief Nelson to look at what the current contracts, I guess what the penalty would be for canceling.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know what that is.
Yeah, so that is something that we continue to. And we could look at different technologies that would be helpful for village residents. And continuing to keep safety in mind.
Clerk treasurer, Jessica.
Okay. So we have an IT update. You may recall that we had budgeted in this fiscal year to complete phase 3 of the upgrade from dinosaurs and chipmunks running our servers to being in Microsoft 365 and then updating the server. So phase 3 was updating the actual server towers, right? Which would be we budgeted 11,000 for that. So just the hardware would be 7,500. But really the more modern solution, as I had a meeting with HPN, is what everyone else is doing, which is you use cloud-based storage and they back up for a fraction of the cost. You might need to still update our server, maybe not. But it would be using that chunk of money to then pay for the cloud access software for water, sewer, and accounting. So if you're Williamson, we have food, water, sewer, and accounting all at once. This will be greater functionality for the office, much labor cost savings to be in the cloud environment of an updated software program. Our desktop software is no longer updated. Files from 2018 that can't open because they're not updated. So it's logical, but the reason I'm bringing it up is as soon as I get the quote, it falls within, would be less than what we actually budgeted for this phase. Gordon could sign the quotes because it was in there, but I wanted you to be aware of that. It is a shift in how we have been storing data. If you have any questions or concerns about it, you can ask now, or we can ask later, and I can send you the thing. I'm pretty excited about it. This other piece of phase 3 is security training for users about how to avoid phishing scams, and all of that. I will explore what the quote is from them versus what MACOM may offer for free. In terms of I believe that there is a requirement to have some annual training for certain people with certain access in government. So that the IT update. The general code update is, you may remember, general code. Hey, we're moving to the next phase. The design criteria. Turned out to be really super simple things to say, oh yeah, great. And now the bigger question will be, here's what we need. This is now the code of all of your laws. Did we miss anything? And they will put it through their own editorial review. They'll put it through their own legal review. Then this board will see it. Will pay the money that was already budgeted to pay them for that phase. Once you all adopt it, then you have this.
I'll have to look at it.
And
We'll need Guy to help with the local law to replace all the local laws.
I didn't budget for that. Okay,
Never do.
Okay. And then the personnel policy update, I put on here a little bit because I want to hold myself to task, because it really sits with me. I did a rewrite of it, in September, end of September, October. I really need to read that again, send it to Warren, and then say, okay, let's do the board all look at it and make your comments and because I think it would be very pertinent to implement for June 1st this year. So our next budget year to make sure, if possible, I think it's not gonna be as daunting as you imagine, but we'll see what appetite the board has to do that. That's my goal, to get it to you the next 2 weeks, so that while you're reading the zoning update code, you can read the policy update. And this is also, I wanted this to appear on the agenda, when the water sewer re-levy note. I've made it on the message board of the water bill for this month, and I'll make a note in the newsletter, but if people read the agenda, I just wanted to be reminded that any water sewer account with a balance greater than $250 as of April 30th will be re-levied onto your property taxes. So pay your bill then, or you pay it with no penalty on your first tax bill, but if you miss that first payment of your tax bill, then that amount is now also part of your penalties, right? So that's that. I also want to give a huge shout out to Jess Weber, who did a lot of research for this budget cycle, and for the IT update, and just continues to support the office work. Never says no, always finds a way to do something and asks questions if she doesn't know. Just Jess Weber. Yeah. Hey, Jess.
Okay, any questions for Jessica? All right, item number 7 is old business. This is our last look, last opportunity to take a look at our village budget before our public hearing on the village budget at our annual organizational meeting next month in April. I don't believe there have been any substantive changes since our last budget working session. I will just let everyone know there's a possibility I might want to tweak 1 or 2 things, in which case I will speak directly to the department commissioner. You know, if we can reduce something by a few thousand here or there, we'll certainly try to take the savings, although what we're really doing is kicking the can down the road a year. Currently, we're looking at it'll be a first tax rate increase in 8 years, 7 years, 8 years.
I don't know, I'd have to look back.
For anyone, sorry,
7
or 8. For anyone who loves budgets, this is the first year in quite some time that we have not had any meaningful assessment increases in the village, which property owners are likely very happy that they did not see their assessments go up very much. I will warn everyone within the sound of my voice that Tompkins County's plan is to reassess every 3 years, which means you're going to see 3 years of assessment increases all at once, instead of having them spread out 1 year at a time. What we tried to do this year, and I'll mention this again in our public hearing next month, what we tried to do is manage the tax rate so that the experience to the property owner is roughly the same or slightly less than what you would have seen in previous years with a flat tax rate but an increased assessment. Which is just a long-winded way of saying it still gets a little bit more expensive every year to live here, as we discussed earlier. I think we've managed to do that with this budget, but I might want to tweak 1 or 2 things if I can find them. I don't know if anyone else had any.
I can say just briefly, besides the part that we just talked about for the hydraulic model for water, the DPW is looking at a dump truck that will be entirely covered by chips. So it is net revenue neutral revenue. It is cost neutral. It's not a revenue. It's cost neutral to the village. But you will see a very large consolidated highway aid line in revenue and the subsequent line down below. but they went around, got a couple quotes. And we can approve those once the new budget is in effect and once we get the first wave of tax revenue in, then we'll have enough to go for that, to cover it until CHIPS hits us, back with the money.
So that 220 in the CHIPS revenue line, that's offset somewhere,
Should be.
Yeah, there's
but in separate lines.
it'll be in,
You got paving in there.
there'll be a paving line and then there'll be a equipment.
Okay, no, I see it, street maintenance CHIPS. Okay.
Or I guess it looks like it's actually all under
Yeah, street maintenance.
street maintenance chips. Maybe I should ask Dusty to actually break that out. We usually buy equipment or trucks from the reserve though, so we must have a line somewhere that the reserve goes in to come out of.
No.
No.
Not if it's a reserve spend. You might just do a so there's street maintenance, CHIPS street maintenance reimbursement, 511042.
Okay.
We might just invent 511043 as street maintenance equipment to cover the chip.
Oh, there
bend.
is a .2 for street maintenance equipment, a couple lines higher there.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
So would you like us to use that one, Jessica? No, it's all under chips, which might be fine, but we could also split that out as like chips for paving versus chips for the dump truck. I don't know if we.
It's up to you, how you want to
Okay.
say that.
Well, that was Ben's point. He's 3 lines up.
Is an equipment line.
There's a blacked out street maintenance equipment line.
Yeah.
You could probably put the dump truck in there.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'd say for me, that would be helpful, right? Because
I
also
agree.
the mini excavator and I like seeing equipment broken out from just the standard paving, I think would be helpful.
that works for me. Is that,
Because when you see street maintenance chips, you think paving entirely.
100% of the time.
is that something, Jessica, I could ask you to split out, if you need a, yeah. I can also give you a,
Paving is usually 45. So just, it's gotta be the difference, right?
yeah, I can find also
Small budget that we're going with.
I was just gonna pull up the quote from Dusty
Oh.
specifically was, the one he was looking at is 138,850, so just,
Oh.
so like 140 plus 45, yeah.
Yeah, and actually, I don't know what the number.
Yeah, why don't I start an email to get you the numbers?
Any other budget comments, questions, concerns? Coupons?
I want to point out something you'll see when I know you do your detailed review, but I had omitted something up here fire budget for the town, the EMS budget for the town, which this board may or may not use, but there's an EMS station for office upkeep line that I had not previously presented to the board if I was doing my final detail. Realize I had that off. I'm gonna copy and paste it. So a new.
There's a maintenance line and a upkeep line that are separate.
So a whole new line was created in the 26-27 EMS budget number A2378B to the EMS station and office. It's 3,500 in it. I had neglected to include that budget.
There's also a maintenance line, right? So we're adding.
EMS maintenance agreements line. This is.
So by law, does this have to be, they share an office, like, by law, does this have to be separated out?
This
No,
is-
billing.
I mean, it's one building.
We're billing for it separately.
Yeah, it's
Okay, so then I guess I don't understand why it's so much. If we're sharing my office space and building space and.
Well, what's
so they're not really sharing all of those things, right? Because the EMS department has sleeping quarters. They have a separate area, right, where they're staying.
Oh,
They're
gotcha,
24 hours
gotcha.
a day. So a lot of this is like replacing the bed.
Gotcha,
Uh,
okay, that explains it more. I just figured the difference between. maintenance on one building that they share, and I understand that there's separate places, but I didn't know how that was like.
They're also not really sharing an office, so Joel and Matt share an office,
Right,
but then the EMS office is out in front. Right?
well, I understand that, but it's like, we're all, it's like saying.
So you need to think of it in terms of take both the maintenance lines from the two different budgets,
Uh-huh.
combine them.
Uh-huh.
That's what we're actually spending every year.
Right,
But we have to split it out between the two because we charge the towns differently.
it seems like a lot.
It's not even nearly enough.
Oh, so the reserve, have you been?
Hence the need, hence the need for 9 million
Gotcha.
for a new building.
And really, when the EMS budget was developed, I didn't develop, right, I'm just reporting it, I neglected to report. They
Yeah.
developed this new reserve for $3,500.
Yeah.
Where I think Ben just said things like beds.
Right.
Oh, whether just board wants to adopt that.
Yeah, I didn't know what he,
Well,
I mean,
be-
that brings
be
an
clear
understanding
that-
of understanding.
Yeah.
What needs to be replaced, I don't,
For,
you don't
just
just look
for,
at it.
for context, I want to be clear that the reason this didn't exist before is because all of those things were donated and people like Joel bought them with his salary and
Uh-huh.
donated them to the station. So this is the village sort of owning responsibility for things that we should have been doing since the get-go. But thank you, Jess.
Yeah,
Thank you
I'll
for
make
catching
sure.
that.
So that was a reserve line.
It's a new reserve line, yeah, it's. Line 240 or line 241.
Yeah, I see it.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Any other budget related comments, questions? So we will do our last minute tweaking relatively soon so that we can get this published with the notice of public hearing for the budget.
Oh, yeah, well, I can notice the public hearing. And
We
you
have to
will.
Notice the budget with it.
Yeah, I just shut that email off, so hopefully.
Salaries and all that fun stuff on the official.
Okay, yes, I got that. Document straight. Okay, yeah, just let me know if you, this is obviously a top priority, so I'm in office all week.
I should have my final review done this week.
Okay, and we're gonna actually, I can't remember if we spoke about this and you may want to do it, but in the revenue side, we just want to call your attention, it's what A2 says it for. Is something that we will be billing for, I assume it should appear.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
It's kind of like a grant placeholder.
Yeah, so.
We don't know what, well, especially after this morning, we don't know what, who's gonna be doing what on the property this summer. Probably will be, but we don't know what that looks like.
So maybe I should just.
No, use it as a placeholder, just
Oh,
like federal and state
worry about
grant
it.
aid.
Funding or projection. That's it, so. And Ben Darfur, the numbers that I was looking at with the software, when I double checked some of the research that was given to me for our initial phone call, is pretty much a wash, so you won't notice
Okay.
much difference in adjustments there.
Excellent.
And the confirming that the due to general from water is the correct number.
Very excited for that.
Yeah.
We'll have a little party.
Wow.
We have a water hose site with biodegradable water hose.
Oh.
Prevent those.
They have reusable.
They have
water,
those.
Wait, reusable water hose that burst on someone?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Yes.
they're unacceptable inventions.
I will only accept the ones from the 80s that look like hand grenades.
Yeah.
So, any other items of old business? Do we have any items of new business? Do we have need of our second monthly meeting? Monday, March 23rd. Marcia won't be here. We might.
You can.
Let's
set
wait
up
until
event.
after executive session.
What if I said I didn't? I couldn't be here.
We could still do it with
Okay. No other items of new business. Second public comment period for those of you who actually stuck it out to the end. If there's any members of the public present in person or online, oh, I see a hand up.
Hey, we figured it out.
I'm gonna ask you to unmute, okay? Just click the button. Did that work?
That did work.
Great.
And I must first apologize for making my dinner in front of you. I've had a few texts telling me that, well, I guess you can't hide, right? But I also wanted to say I was really happy with the presentation that Ben gave on the zoning planning. I know you've been looking at this issue really carefully and trying to meet everybody's needs, and it feels really good to me. I do want to say that there's a language in that document that I feel, the part where you were talking about businesses that could be small, medium, or large, or something that was primarily for guests or occasionally. And I do hope that when the final draft of that comes through, that it's much more specific. I think people are going to want to know what small, medium, and large means. Am I making myself clear there? Do you get my point?
Yeah. I can actually say briefly on the small, medium, and large, it's very specific. It's a specific square footage, and I didn't get into the details, but that is in the full law.
Okay, good. And the, primarily used for guests, I'm sure that will all be fleshed out too.
Those are intended to be, at least in the draft, and we can always have a different conversation. Those are intended to be a little more vague. It's hard to be more specific. Is it 67% of revenue? Is it 78% of revenue? Do we want to be asking people for their revenue dollars to understand number of how are they tracking between people that are staying there overnight versus an additional guest that they bring in? The intention there is to give guardrails. So if it gets to a point where it's clearly no longer just primarily for guests, it gives people and the zoning, the code enforcement officer a way to have that conversation. And then on top of that, the intention is very clearly this definition is strongly held in mind with site plan review as well. And that site plan review is the other place where that can become more specific as needed. So that's a little bit of a different flavor, and it will be like the draft language is not intended to be much more specific than that for those reasons, but that site plan review is a very strong added guardrail on top. And then it gives generally people and code enforcement officer the right guardrails to make a judgment call along with site plan review to regulate those things. So just to give a little more understanding of the details there, because sometimes it's very easy to have a detail and sometimes it's much more difficult. So we have to be kind of cognizant of which place we're in and build the right structure around it.
Okay, well, I think that sort of clears it up for me. One thing for sure, we don't want to get into a tattletale with the zoning officer all the time. You can imagine that we wouldn't want to go anywhere near that. Now I'm going to turn a big corner here and congratulate you all on the Three Falls Park. I really am so pleased that that's happening. I did go this summer to one of the planning meetings, and here in St. Augustine, for the last 4 years, have been a volunteer in a national park. I work in the visitor center. And there are so many people who volunteer. We give hours and hours and hours of work maintaining. There's actually 2 parks here. But this summer, when I was at that planning meeting, I was asking how I could become a volunteer at the new park. And they seemed to be saying that they weren't permitted to take volunteers, that there was some sort of a legal parameter around that. I didn't honestly, having my experience with so many volunteers working for the national parks, it was hard for me to really understand why they were saying they couldn't have volunteers. But I would like to raise my hand to that. I would like to be a volunteer there. And if you have any way of getting them to understand that, I think a lot of people in our community will want to support with their time and energy.
Yeah, okay, just to clarify that, there will be ample opportunity for volunteers to participate in any number of events or fundraising activity and so forth, where the restriction or where the line is fairly crystal clear and unmovable is on things like labor. Because it is a state park property, New York State Department of Labor rules would not allow volunteer labor on construction, demolition, landscaping, tree removal. Those all have to be either parks employees specifically, or if it's contractor construction type work, it has to go through the New York State approved bid process and so on. So when you're talking about the actual labor improvements that are going to need to happen over the next, say, decade, that has to be done a certain way per New York State law. But certainly there will be volunteer aspects of the effort, primarily, I think, around events, organization of events, and certainly fundraising, where we, the LDC, which is part of the reason why the LDC was created, will be able to solicit and utilize volunteers.
Well, I'm really glad to have a clearer understanding of that. Thank you. And I am just so pleased that our community is a part of that. So thank you all for all your work that you're doing in all these respects. I highly recommend a spinach salad with bacon. Good night.
Thanks, Kathy. Any other public comment? Any other recommendations for dinner? If there is no other public comment, then I would entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss at least 2 different personnel matters.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Good night, all.